Hello everybody, I'm Jack Dennis, and many of you know me from my fly fishing books and instructional DVDs. You may not know that I'm also a coach of Fly Fishing Team USA, America's team in the World Fly Fishing Championships. Many years ago, I got a chance to meet a world champion, Vladi, who is a champion of the world in 1989 in Finland, right?
Right.
He started a new technique with that championship. A technique we kind of call Polish nymphing, which is after the Poles. The Czechs adopted, then it became Czech nymphing. Modifications. Then Spanish nymphing. We call it Euro Nymphing, or European nymphing. We're going to introduce you to this technique. Vladi's going to teach you. We're here on the Big Thompson River in Colorado. We're here at the National Fly Fishing Championships, where a lot of people are going to be using Euro Nymphing to try to win the national championship, right?
Right.
Vladi does seminars literally around the world on this technique, and you're going to be blessed with his instruction because you're learning from the master. So let's get started.
Okay.
First thing Vladi's going to do is fish the water closest to him before he wades out. He's casting up. Notice the line, there's not a big belly. He's moving the rod tip. He's going to rotate his wrist with a little quick flick and cast it up. No false casting. Again, look at the angle of the line. Comes back. Now, the reason he's flicking that wrist is the fish sometimes will follow the fly. By flicking the wrist, it'll move it enough, and a lot of times they'll grab it. In fact, I'm going to bet that we're going to see a fish caught with that flick of the wrist. Notice how he's extending himself. It's very important to understand this cast. Watch how his arm is just like the rod. Now notice how he brings the rod over like that. He brings that over there so that it keeps the angle of the line going upstream. So all the line lands upstream. You don't have a belly in the line where the line is pulling the fly. The anchor fly is hitting the bottom. Now, many times in the course of the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about line and what that line's going to do for you. You're going to actually see the line jumping up and down. And when you see that line jumping up and down, that means it's touching the bottom. And between his fingers, he's going to feel a lot. The more you fish this technique, the more you're going to understand what the relationship between that line through the leader into the fly. Why do you have that relationship? It's because you're pulling the line. You're feeling it. And that is where the European type of fishing really shines in this type of water. The rod is straight above the line and he's leading it. He's actually letting the fly sink. By holding the rod up higher, it's sinking down. Now see how he brings the rod down? Now it's right on the bottom then. Again, it's sinking, sinking. See, this is a little bit technique. He's not really pulling it. This is why I say the more I watch him fish. Now see how he raises his arm up? The arm and the rod are one. And that's the hardest part of this, everybody, is learning to do that. Because we're used to fishing a whole different way. We're not used to fishing our whole arm. Now again, he's letting it sink. He's going to rotate the wrist. There he goes, and there's a fish. Flying fish, no less. I know there's bigger fish out there, and you're going to watch in a minute, you're going to see them being caught.
It's a little guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Fish. Opa! Nice fish.
Come on, fish.
Okay.
Really good place to try your European nymphing. Notice that Vladi is going for the rocks, trying to cast so that it gets swept by the edges of the rocks. This time of the day, high sun, the fish are going to be tucked into those rocks, being opportunistic. He's pulling them a little bit slower than he would in the faster water. Again, letting him get hit the bottom that time. Really see here how the rod is pointing and following the fly. The current is going to dictate how fast he pulls the fly. Again, working the rocks, trying to find any fish that might be tucked right on the bottom, still feeding. European nymphing works very well in the heat of the day when there isn't a hatch, when you have to really, like, as they say, farm a fish out. I call it a good lunch technique. Bring out the rod at lunch, practice your European technique. Now he's working closer towards the other side. Notice that he stepped forward. He repositions and steps very methodically. Raising his rod tip up.
Change fly.
Change flies. Now he's going to change some flies. He's not getting the effect. Now would you know when to change flies? Well, that's a feel that you're going to get when you think you should have had a fish, which he thought, and didn't get one. Now we're doing a downstream, swinging it farther down, letting the current swing it. Again, a good caddis technique. So the caddis will go with the current and swing to the surface. Letting it go quite deep now, right on the bottom. There we go. Oh, that was a nice fish. Really working those rocks. Little backwaters behind the rocks. Rocks, of course, affect the current. And what you don't see on the surface, there we go, went right through the rock. That's just where I expected it to be a fish. Notice again how fast from the competition, he makes sure he gets them right in. Notice where the net was, so he just kind of slides them right in. This is why he was the world champion. What you just saw was Vladi hook that fish with his Polish technique. This is where it really shines. The current goes behind the rock and gets sucked in. If you have a strike indicator, what it'll do is that when the fly gets sucked in, it pulls the indicator down. With this technique, the rod's high, the fly gets sucked into the rock, you pull it back out, the fish sees it, and just what you saw right there, you connect up. It's a deadly technique when fishing behind a rock. One of the problems is the rock, especially when they're submerged, doesn't show you that little sucking in current that makes it so effective, and why fish can just lay in there and wait for the flies to come to them. He's working this area. He's keeping a lower profile. Notice one knee is down, the other is up. Gives him good stability, keeps his profile low. And again, he's working where he thinks there ought to be fish.